I used to believe I was chosen. Now I know I was taken. The night my father died, I thought I was losing the only man who had ever loved me. I didn't know I was about to lose my entire identity. My name is Elena Carter. At least, that's what it used to be. For 24 years, I was Elena Hayes, daughter of Daniel Hayes, a quiet man with tired eyes and steady hands. He packed my lunches. He braided my hair badly. He stayed awake during my fevers. He told me I was his greatest miracle. And I believed him. Until the day I found a document hidden behind a loose floorboard in his study. Original birth certificate. Name, Elena Grace Carter. Father, Michael Carter. Not Daniel Hayes. Someone else. He was already gone when I found it. Heart failure, the doctors said. Peaceful. But there is nothing peaceful about discovering your life was built on a lie. I searched the house like someone breaking into a stranger's home. In his closet, behind old coats, I found a metal box. Inside were letters, legal documents, newspaper clippings. One headline froze my blood. Local engineer dies in construction collapse. Michael Carter, my biological father, dead 20 years ago. And Daniel, the man who raised me, had been the project supervisor on that site. My chest tightened. He wasn't just a friend. He was responsible. I don't remember being taken. I was only 3 months old. But according to the court documents, there had been a custody hearing. Michael's parents, my grandparents, had filed for guardianship. They lost. Daniel testified that they were emotionally unstable. He claimed they weren't fit to raise a child. The judge granted him temporary custody. Temporary. That word twisted inside me. Temporary became permanent. And I never knew they existed. I found my grandmother through an old address in the paperwork. Margaret Carter. She lived 2 hours away in a small coastal town. I stood outside her house for 10 minutes before knocking. When she opened the door, her eyes widened. You have his face, she whispered. Not Daniel's. Michael's. Tears filled her eyes before I even said a word. I've waited 20 years, she said. Waited. For me. We sat in her living room, surrounded by photographs of a life I had never known. There was an investigation after the accident, she told me quietly. Your father had raised concerns about safety violations. Daniel dismissed them. My pulse roared in my ears. He signed off on the final inspection. The room felt smaller. The day before the collapse, Michael told me they argued. Argued. About safety. About lives. About responsibility. He trusted him, she whispered. That word hit hardest. Trusted. I went home and replayed every memory I had of Daniel. The way he avoided talking about his past. The way he stiffened whenever construction sites appeared on television. The way he never visited certain parts of town. Guilt. It had always been there. I just never recognized it. Was adopting me love? Or was it penance? Did he raise me because he cared? Or because he couldn't live with what he'd done? In the metal box, I found one final letter. Unopened. Addressed to me. But dated 5 years ago. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. Elena, there will come a day when you question me. I pray that day never comes. But if it does, know this. I did not mean for anyone to die. The words blurred. I made a mistake. I signed papers I shouldn't have. I trusted a company that cut corners. Your father tried to stop it. I was arrogant. I thought I knew better. My heart shattered quietly. After the collapse, I couldn't face his family. I couldn't face myself. When they fought for you in court, I convinced myself they blamed me. And they did. I was afraid if you grew up around them, you would learn to hate me. He paused there. I could see it in the ink, smudged uneven. So I took you. Not rescued. Not adopted. Took. At first, I told myself it was temporary. But then you wrapped your fingers around mine. And I knew I would never let you go. Tears dripped onto the page. I loved you before I deserved to. The truth is a strange thing. It doesn't erase love. It complicates it. I hated him for lying. For keeping me from my grandparents. For deciding my entire life without giving me a choice. But I also remembered scraped knees. Bedtime stories. The night he slept on a hospital chair when I had pneumonia. Was that guilt? Or was that fatherhood? Maybe both. At Michael's grave, I stood between 2 men who shaped my life. One gave me blood. The other gave me memories. One died because of a mistake. The other lived because of it. I don't know who I belong to, I whispered. The wind answered with silence. But something inside me shifted. Belonging isn't ownership. It's connection. And I was connected to both of them. In different ways. I didn't change my last name. I didn't erase Daniel from my life story. But I added the missing pieces. I visit my grandmother every month. I learned about Michael's laugh, his dreams, his stubborn sense of justice. And I learned something unexpected. My grandmother doesn't hate Daniel. He lived with punishment every day, she said once. That's heavier than prison. People ask me now, when they hear the story, do you forgive him? I think about that carefully. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's choosing not to let anger define you. Daniel Hayes was the man who took me. But he was also the man who stayed. The man who carried guilt like a shadow. The man who loved a child he had no right to keep, and no strength to lose. I am not the girl who was stolen. I am the woman who survived the truth. And I carry two names in my heart. Michael and Daniel. One gave me life. The other spent his life trying to deserve me. Final line. I used to think I was chosen. Then I believed I was taken. Now I understand. I was both. I didn't plan to sue him. He was already dead. You can't drag a ghost into court. But the truth has weight, and weight demands somewhere to fall. 3 weeks after reading the letter, I received a call from a journalist. Is this Elena Hayes? I don't use that name anymore. A pause. Elena Carter, then. My stomach tightened. There are new developments in the 20-year-old Carter construction collapse case, he said. We found internal documents suggesting the safety report was altered. Altered? By who? Silence. Daniel Hayes. The company Daniel worked for no longer existed. Bankruptcy. Lawsuits. Settlements sealed. But sealed doesn't mean buried forever. The journalist sent me scanned copies. Highlighted in red. Original safety assessment. Fail. Final submitted report. Pass. The signatures looked identical. But the ink dates were different. He had changed it. After my father protested. After he warned them. After he tried to stop it. My hands shook so violently I dropped my phone. This wasn't negligence. This was decision. I drove to my grandmother's house without calling. She opened the door and saw my face. He changed the report, I said. She didn't look surprised. We suspected. You knew. We couldn't prove it. My knees felt weak. Why didn't you tell me? She stepped aside so I could enter. Because you loved him. That answer destroyed me more than the documents did. Grief is complicated. Anger is simple. For the first time in my life, I felt clean anger. Not confusion. Not heartbreak. Anger. He didn't just make a mistake. He chose profit. He chose reputation. He chose arrogance. And my father paid for it. Then Daniel took me. Raised me. Loved me. As if that balanced the scale. Did he think bedtime stories erased concrete and steel? I found his old law firm through archived emails. The attorney who handled the custody case was still practicing. I booked an appointment under my birth name. When I sat across from him, he recognized it instantly. Elena Carter, he murmured. I haven't heard that name in years. I want the truth, I said. He hesitated. Off record. Yes. He sighed. Daniel was desperate. The Carter family wanted a civil lawsuit and guardianship. If you grew up with them, you would have been told he was responsible. He was responsible. He nodded slowly. Yes. The word felt like impact. He argued that raising you was redemption. Redemption. He turned me into a moral bandage. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying moments. When I was 12 and asked him, "Were you scared when I was born?" He answered, terrified. Now I understand why. Not because he was new to fatherhood. Because he was raising the living proof of his failure. The article broke 2 days later. New evidence reopens Carter collapse case. My name wasn't mentioned. But Daniel's was. Social media did what it does best. Judged. Condemned. Speculated. Former co-workers came forward anonymously. He ignored warnings. He didn't want delays. He thought Michael was overreacting. Overreacting. That word tasted like poison. People started contacting me. Reporters. Activists. Even distant relatives. They all wanted something. A statement. A reaction. Condemnation. But my silence wasn't weakness. It was war inside my chest. Because no matter what he did, he also tucked me in every night. How do you hate the man who taught you how to read? How do you defend the man who killed your father? I went back to his grave. I know, I said. Wind pushed against my coat. You didn't mean for him to die. That was true. But you chose wrong. My voice cracked. And then you chose me. Tears blurred everything. You don't get to be both villain and hero. But maybe that's the most human thing of all. The company's insurance settlement records showed something unexpected. Daniel had refused a bonus the year after the collapse. He donated anonymously to a safety reform organization. He volunteered in construction safety training programs. For years. Quietly. No publicity. No credit. Guilt doesn't scream. It works in silence. I found one last video file on his old laptop. Recorded 3 years ago. He looked older. Smaller. "If you're watching this," he began, "it means the truth finally surfaced." He swallowed. "I don't regret raising you." His eyes filled. "I regret the day I let pride speak louder than caution." A long pause. "I tried to become the kind of man your father believed I was." That sentence broke something open inside me. He didn't steal me to erase Michael. He stole me because he couldn't survive being the man who killed him. Raising me wasn't forgiveness. It was punishment. Daily. Relentless. Loving me meant remembering why he had to. I stood in my apartment surrounded by 2 photo frames. One of Michael holding me as a baby. One of Daniel at my college graduation. Both smiling. Both proud. Both mine. Blood made one my father. Choice made the other. Betrayal built the bridge between them. The case reopened officially 6 months later. Too late for prison. Too late for direct justice. But not too late for truth. The official ruling changed from structural failure to negligent authorization. Daniel Hayes' name entered public record as partially responsible. History corrected itself. And strangely, so did I. I changed my name again. Not Hayes. Not just Carter. Elena Carter Hayes. Not to honor him. Not to absolve him. But to accept the full story. I am the daughter of the man who died. And the daughter of the man who caused it. I carry both blood and consequence. Love and betrayal. Truth and forgiveness. He was the man who took me. But I am the woman who chose what to do with the truth. It was raining the day they unveiled the memorial. 21 years late. The construction site where my father died had been rebuilt into a public safety training center. Glass walls. Steel beams. Clean lines. They named it after Michael Carter. My biological father. The man who never got to see me walk. Or speak. Or grow. A crowd gathered under black umbrellas. Reporters whispered. Cameras waited. And I stood alone beside 2 graves in my memory. One beneath the earth. One beneath my skin. I wore black. Not for mourning. For acknowledgement. When they called my name to speak, the rain softened. As if even the sky needed to listen. I stepped to the podium. My hands did not shake. But my heart did. "I am Elena Carter Hayes," I began. A pause moved through the crowd at the double name. "I am the daughter of the man this building honors." My voice held. "And I am also the daughter of the man whose mistake made this building necessary." Silence fell like gravity. 21 years ago, my father warned that something was wrong. I didn't need to say which one. They say tragedy is an accident. But sometimes it isn't. Sometimes it's pride. Sometimes it's haste. Sometimes it's one signature that should never have been written. The wind moved through the steel beams behind me. My biological father died because someone believed the risk was small. A breath. That someone raised me. A sound rippled through the crowd, not shock but realization. I spent my life loving the man who caused my father's death. The rain grew heavier, and he spent his life trying to deserve that love. I looked at the plaque with Michael's name engraved in silver. People want villains and heroes. Clean lines. Clear sides. I swallowed. But life is not clean. My father Michael died trying to protect others. My father Daniel lived trying to correct himself. One gave his life. One gave his guilt. And I stand here because of both. I stepped away from the podium. But then I stopped. There was one thing left unsaid. The thing that had lived inside me since I read that first letter. I turned back. When I found out the truth, I hated him. The words were quiet now. Not because he loved me, but because he took the choice away from me. A tear slipped free. He took me from the family who would have told me who I was. Another breath. But he also took responsibility in the only way he knew how. The rain soaked through my coat. And I don't know if that makes him selfish. My voice broke for the first time. Or broken. After the ceremony, people approached me with sympathy in their eyes. But sympathy is shallow compared to truth. I left before anyone could offer it. Instead, I drove to the cemetery. 2 headstones. 2 different sections. 2 different men. I stood between them. The space felt intentional. Michael Carter. Daniel Hayes. I placed one white flower on each grave. You were wrong, I whispered to Daniel's stone. The rain tapped softly against granite. But you loved me. I turned to Michael's grave. You were right. My voice cracked. And you never got the chance. The space between the graves felt like the story of my life. A line drawn in earth. I stepped into it. I forgive you, I said, though I wasn't sure which one I meant. Maybe both. Maybe neither. Forgiveness isn't approval. It's release. And I was tired of carrying weight that began before I could speak. The sky began to clear. A thin line of light cut through the clouds. For the first time in months, I felt something that wasn't anger, or confusion, or grief. It was something quieter. Acceptance. I was not stolen property. I was not a living apology. I was not a mistake to be corrected. I was the result of love and failure colliding. And surviving. Before I left, I knelt between the graves. I will not choose between you, I whispered. I choose myself. The wind moved through the trees. And for a brief, impossible second, I felt like both men were listening. As I walked away, I didn't look back. Because I understood something finally. He was the man who took me. But he was also the man who stayed. And the one who died trying to protect me never stopped being my father either. Love does not erase betrayal. And betrayal does not erase love. Both can live in the same heart. Mine does. I was taken. I was loved. And in the end, I was the one who chose what to carry.